before we move on, Shelley submitted a question to you, Emily, that perhaps we can cover now. What are some of the key technical considerations if a firm is looking at a rent or lease option? This, for example, infers a multi-product facility and contamination control opportunities. So key technical considerations when coming to rent or lease.
Sure. So one of the things I always look at is it designed for a commercial process? Because commercially, from a CMC and design perspective, that is when you're going to have the most stringent controls. So Shelley gets a great question, and also nice to hear from you again. It can really, if it's maybe a real academic or a startup type of environment, they're not going to have the controls. So when I think about looking to rent or lease, can that space that you're looking at supply material for a commercial program? So does it have all the airflow? Does it have all the HVAC? Does it have the ability to put in those controls to the space? Or has it been designed for more of an academic or single product program? Because if you're going to rent or lease a space, technically, you don't want to have to spend capital retrofitting that tremendously. So I would just make sure that it can maintain all of the critical elements of the guidelines, so CFR 21, to make sure that you can implement a contamination control strategy like you would for a commercial program. I would look at that, because as long as that canvas is there, you can produce safely nearly anything you wanted to in that scale.
Thanks, Emily. And thank you, Shelley, for your question. And definite reminder to our audience to please do submit your questions. We're happy to answer them as we go. So Sugu, my question for you as we move on here, from your perspective, what does a sponsor need to really have locked down before it can realistically expect to move from early material generation into the clinic without delay? And is that even really possible?
Yeah, to be able to move into clinic and not expect delays, a few things need to be locked down. But one is the process definition, both at a vector level and at a T-cell level, if you're using a viral vector. Both need to be sufficiently locked down, and you need to have an understanding of your critical process parameters and also the acceptable variability. Because once you move into the clinic, if the material is going to be different from your healthy donor material, and if you get stuck there, then delays at that point are inevitable. Also, there could be variability from one patient material to another patient material. So your process needs to be defined in a way that can actually accommodate that. And that is really important to go into the clinic without delay. And then Emily talked about the analytical strategy. That also needs to be in place. Methods need to be qualified, and then they need to be qualified with evolving regulatory requirements. We see that, the regulators are also trying to focus on the mechanism of action. So you need to be able to tie in the analytical method to the underlying mechanism of action, and that's important. And then, of course, the ability to execute, right? Because you may have all this, but if your manufacturing facility is not able to execute flawlessly, then that's going to cause a delay. So the site needs to be ready, the raw materials need to be qualified, to have the batch records, and also the, like I said, the ability to accommodate the variability is important. So it's not just enough to get the IND cleared, but you want to be able to enable patient treatment following the IND clearance. And that's when you avoid the delays.
Great, thanks. I want to talk a little bit about partner selection. So as companies, really, as cell and gene therapy companies, as we're really sorting through a crowded landscape of manufacturing options, and partner selection is far more than a procurement decision. And so for cell and gene therapy companies with active pipelines, the wrong fit can slow everything down, and the right one becomes a partner with the team. And so, Emily, my first question is for you. In our current market, what should a cell and gene therapy company look for in a manufacturing partner beyond price and capacity?
Or number one, I'll say this CMC. So does the CDMO have a strong regulatory CMC? So what do you as an innovator have strength in? Very often it's the science, the initial discovery, the asset itself. But what does the partner have that can supplement or complement where you have deficits? So I think CMC and having a good regulatory, department and understanding what that is really important, because if they don't, you're going to pay for it later. You're going to burn more capital. And then I think the technical fit too. Is it a technical fit? And then think about your cash runway. So do you want to develop a process from scratch and spend that time and money? Or are you looking for a partner that maybe has a platform, right? If you have a standard capsid, it's a monogenic issue, you can make it fairly easily. Like then they have a platform might be a really, really good fit for you that's going to help save you time and money. A good CMC, department and ability to influence those decisions and guide and help supplement you in that way, I think is really important. I think the maturity too, have they been around for a while and are they going to be a partner for me? And then I like to be able to really have a partner, like you said. So do they have a generous PIP policy? Are they going to really collaborate with you and allow you to, be a partner with them, transparency and communication. So it's got to feel right. And it's got to really kind of supplement what you're looking for. And then I think the last thing I'll always say is, because a lot of CDMOs now are offering an innovation or a technology. So they might have a cell line or, maybe a capsid you could license and licensing. So what does that mean? If you use the technology that they're providing, whether it's their platform or maybe a cell line or something like that, what does that mean for you as a sponsor down the road? And what does that cash runway look like? And making sure that your VC or your PE, whoever you're partnering with, is okay with that type of thing. A lot of people forget about that, and it can be really enticing, but understanding what that means phase 2 and commercially is important.
Yeah, great advice. And I think you're right to, again, feeling good about that partnership in all the ways you just recommended. And, that strategy is really important to feel good about it on the back end. Sugu, let's talk about, what separates a partner that can support a real program from one that can kind of only handle a short-term task. You know, what does that differentiation look like and why is it important?
And Emily referred to some of those. A partner that only handle a short-term task can just, do a unit operation or something. But we've been talking about the fit to the overall program strategy, and that's really important. So a real partner understands the program context and enables advancement of the program and not just perform a unit operation. So they should have the integrated skill set in process, analytics, quality, regulatory. From a construct standpoint, you have the knowledge there, but they want to be able to understand that and implement that in their site. And that's really important. And also, they should be able to anticipate the downstream implications and adjust accordingly. They also bring integrated capabilities, and they need to operate with transparency. They should have good quality standards and a quality culture that actually aligns with the CGT or cell and gene therapy regulatory requirements. They should also be able to understand the implications of their raw materials and when the raw materials, those could also have implications. So they should be able to bring all that knowledge to the table so that the process knowledge and all the operational knowledge kind of is put together, and then you can advance the program forward.
Terrific advice. Thank you. Emily, before we move on to certainly want to talk about Kite and their in-house perspective. That's a whole other conversation before we get to that. I wanted to ask you, what do you think are the biggest warning signs that a cell and gene therapy company is choosing a partner maybe too narrowly, too quickly? We want to make sure that we're vetting all options. And what are some red flags that you have seen or you recommend against?
Or I think that the first thing is you haven't verified installed capabilities. So a lot of people be like, yeah, we can do that. Have you done that? Can you show me in a redacted version that you've done that? So there's not a CDMO in the world that can't do that. They can redact anything. So I would just want evidence of successful programs that they've run, or not just we can do it, but demonstrating that they can do it. And I think when you start to not look for that evidence, then you're making hope your strategy. And that we all know from Lululemon that hope is not a strategy. But it's just, that's really the first warning sign. Just, kind of having a great relationship, or so-and-so told me about it and my friend works over there, and they just show me that the evidence that you've done that before. So there's no, reason to not check that. That's really the first red flag. And then I think too, the famous, we'll just issue that in a change order later. So when those change orders start rolling in, like, even before you sign the proposal process or immediately after, yeah. So there's probably a scoping issue is what I would say. And it's just, you have to watch, because it does start with sales. It does start with business development. And I've certainly been there before, where I, really, really cared for someone and we can totally do this. And maybe neither of us really understood what was going to happen down the road.